About 40 heads of state and government, as well as politicians and security experts from almost 100 countries and regions, attended the three-day annual Munich Security Conference in Germany. China's top diplomat Wang Yi, who is director of the Office of the Foreign Affairs Commission of the Communist Party of China's Central Committee, attended the conference in person. He laid out China's basic principles on security issues, especially on how to achieve lasting security in Europe. Regarding the Ukraine crisis, he said China has, quote-unquote, neither stood by idly nor thrown fuel on the fire, and that everything China has been doing is to facilitate peace talks. As the crisis is about to enter its second year, what efforts does China see urgently needed on all sides to stop the conflict? Can the U.S. help build lasting peace and stability in Europe and beyond? And also, top diplomats from China and the U.S. had an informal contact on the margins of the conference, the first face-to-face after ties were further disrupted by the U.S. shooting down a weather monitoring airship of China. What was discussed? Will the meeting prevent bilateral ties from getting worse, to a small extent at least? Welcome to this special edition of The Point, focusing on the Munich Security Conference. I'm pleased to be joined from Munich, Germany, by Wang Yis, President of the Center for China and Globalization; from Rome, Italy, by Francesco Sisci, Senior Fellow at Renmin University of China; and from Beijing by Huo Zhengxing, Professor at the China University of Political Science and Law. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point, and especially to my guests in Europe who are joining me in this inconvenient hour. So, Professor Wang, let me go to you first. Wang Yi, who is also a member of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee, said China will publish the document on China's stance on how to find a political settlement to the Ukraine crisis. He also explained that the document will reiterate China's important propositions, which stress that sovereignty and territorial integrity of all countries should be respected, and that the purposes and principles of the UN Charter should be upheld. Help us understand how important and timely is China's message that has been aired at the conference this time, and how well has these messages gone down with the audiences there?
Yeah, thank you, Liu Xin. I think the meeting at Munich Security Conference is highly watched. Hundreds of senior government, heads of state, ministers, and think tanks community all came here. I think State Councilor Wang Yi, the Director Wang Yi of the Central Foreign Affairs Office, has made a speech at Munich Security Conference on site, and with a very highly watched event. So during that speech, Director Wang actually mentioned about this. China is going to make a peace proposal for the Ukraine crisis, and that was really a big news. Actually, I noticed that a lot of people really highly, talked about this from the audience, from the participant of the conference. I was actually asking many times, what is China going to propose? They really care about that and interested to know about that. I think the reason for that is also that Ukraine has been a big theme, actually, a huge thing now at the Munich Security Conference. There's even Ukraine delegates from non-government sector was there. There was a big debate about the future, how they can solve the crisis, and then it looks like that has really driven more the U.S. and Europe together. So now what China can do, and what really is the outcome. And then even the chairman of the Munich Security Conference said at the end of the conference, and he looks maybe next year when he have the Munich Security Conference, he hopes that the Ukraine crisis is over. So this time the China's peace plan is really important, and that is highly watched and discussed here in Munich.
Right. Well, while talking about the conflict, of course, the stalemate of the situation, especially in terms of peace negotiation between Russia and Ukraine and the West, some people in the West accuse China of not doing the right thing, not doing more literally to stop Russia from either launching the attacks, the invasion in their eyes, or doing more to make Russia stop, and so that peace talks can start. But China's logic is, if the West continues to provide weapon to to Ukraine. That's going to make more ordinary people suffer. The Ukraine will be fodder, and peace talks will not be able to be achieved. And their goal is to ultimately weaken Russia, which actually this has been hailed by the United States as part of what the West has achieved collectively. So, Mr. Cixi, how do you look at these two logics? While China says stop, putting fuel on the fire, where the West says we are going to put more weaponry, we are going to provide more ammunition. Which one do you see is key to solving the stalemate?
Well, if there are two logics at odds with one another, this is already a problem. The two sides should find a common ground to work together, because if there are two ideas about how to solve the problem, that is already not easy. The other thing is that, of course, the war in Ukraine is extremely complicated. Many people in the West do not want to see the end of Russia or a terrible defeat of Russia. However, they don't want to see the defeat of Ukraine either. And it is very hard to find a compromise, especially after 1 year of fighting and a lack of clear results, political results from the sides of Russia. And I would say, speaking of 1 year, there is a political isolation, much stronger political isolation of Russia vis-à-vis Europe. So all these elements make very difficult to find, so far, a political and peaceful solution. Efforts must be made, but I think we have to be quite realistic and know that fightings will go on possibly for some time at this stage.
Well, Professor Huo, despite the historical roles the United States, while leading NATO, for instance, played in resulting where the situation was when the war broke out, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris addressed the conference regarding to the Ukraine crisis. Let's listen to one of the things that she said about it.
No nation is safe in a world where one country can violate the sovereignty and territorial integrity of another. Where crimes against humanity are committed with impunity, where a country with imperialist ambitions can go unchecked.
All right, Professor Huo, well, she didn't mention which country that is, but if you put the United States in the subject line, it seems to work perfectly, and there are a lot of applauses as well. What do you make of what the U.S. has said? I mean, is it in the position to point finger at Russia in this point?
In my opinion, the crisis in Ukraine is really complex. Because in recent decades, the NATO expanded eastward, so it threatened Russia's national security. This is one of the most important historic contexts of the conflicts. Well, I think it's right to say that the post-war international order was established by the United States. However, the recent development shows that the U.S. now it tries to destroy the order that it created in the 1940s. So I should say that in terms of China, I think that China is the real country that hopes to end the conflicts in Ukraine, because China is the real neutral third party to this conflict. As Chinese diplomats say that both Russia and Ukraine are the friendly nation of China. So I think that China is really, or is likely, they expects the end of the conflict as soon as possible.
Well, China, yeah, well, not only China. At the conference, actually, Western leaders admit themselves that they don't have the trust of global South countries in what they're doing in Ukraine in terms of their support to Ukraine. For instance, French President Macron said the West should have done more to convince the South that its strong support for Ukraine was not born out of double standards. German Chancellor said it's not enough to invoke common values in order to be credible and persuasive to the global South. Professor Wang, why is that so? Is there a little bit of soul-searching by Western leaders why the global South is not on board with the West's almost unconditional support in means of supporting ammunition to Ukraine?
Yes, I think that actually during the conference, actually also last time the French president said that at the Paris Peace Forum I was there, the West, the double standards, and also the how do we, conduct for example, sanctions? I mean, that is not favored by most developing global South as well, even including countries like India, South Africa, and Brazil, and many countries like that. So I think, while Ukraine and Russian war broke out, I mean, all the West attention now is on that. For example, we had a huge earthquake disaster in Turkey, over 40,000 people there, but we haven't seen coverage a lot on the Western media, for example, or maybe so that is something that a lot of countries, there's a lot of crisis in developing countries in the global South, and that's where all the things happen. So we of course it's very tragic that we have this Russian-Ukraine war going on, but it's also whereas many countries also have their own crisis too. So I think that's where they are calling for more attention. I noticed that China top diplomat Wang Yi has also met Ukraine foreign minister here in Munich. So that is really also interesting to see that.
Yeah. Well, Professor Cixi, Wang Yi said China's rise is to be celebrated because for 1/5 of humanity to have peace, stability, and prosperity, that is a good thing for the world. But do you think those who have fears about China's rise will listen to this? Do you think his message has gone down well?
Well, I think, first of all, I think this is right. Of course, peace and stability for 1/5 of the world is a huge contribution to the whole world peace. But unfortunately, I think since a few years, there is been a growing mistrust between the West and China. And it's very complicated. The reasons of this mistrust are extremely complicated. And they should be addressed. There should be something done about that. Unfortunately, the balloon and the war in Ukraine are not helping. I think Mr. Wang Yi is doing a great effort, is pushing forward, but I'm afraid looking at things from this side, a lot more needs to be done.
I fully understand that. I just want to have one last question really for Mr. Wang Huiyao, because you are in Munich. What about the protests? I mean, here we read about people in Cologne, for instance, in the carnival, where they strongly protest that the German foreign minister is copying the talking points from Washington. Why is there such discontent with the German political establishment or the European political establishment in what they're doing, and the consequences, the negative consequences being felt by the general public?
Yeah, I think there's still a big desire in Europe, particularly countries like France and Germany, to be more independency or strategic autonomy. That, but unfortunately, we see this Ukraine-Russian war has really driven the EU and also US together. This NATO is getting tighter. So that's where I think the German now, particularly this conference, they are showing more closeness. So that probably we have to get the some independence of the European policy. So this is really, I think a lot of people are wondering, even we have a Ukraine war, can we become also making our own decisions, have our own defense, or maybe can we really totally rely on U.S. or can we do something on our own? That is also a lot of people feel like that.
All right, we're going to take a short break, and when we continue, we'll talk about the informal contact between China and the United States, between our top diplomats. Some of the guests will stay, but I hope you will stay right after the break.